I gotta tell you, Mr. Scruggs, I've been doing a ceremonial smoke piece for the pods as I've launched this new one. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
gonna send this over to you. Where are you at? You're in Florida.
I'm
Yeah,
in
so I'll
Tampa,
send this
yeah.
some energy to you, all the way from the desert.
That's love. That's love. That's
Hey
love,
man,
man.
it's a pleasure to have you on. I think I kind of relaunched a little bit of a show here, and I'm back in the game a little bit. And I was really fortunate to talk to you. I don't remember when, it was years ago, but we did some stuff when I was back with the Mind Strong project, and I got to see
Yeah.
you sporadically throughout the seasons when I was with the Giants last couple of years, and you've been doing your thing. I remember specifically, I think I saw you in Philly. Do you remember that when I came up and saw you? Was that in
Yeah, it
Philly?
was Philly. It was
Yeah, in
Philly,
batting
yeah.
practice. And
Yeah.
obviously the background story is I played against you back in the day when you were at UNLV. I actually just rewatched your first double today in Major League Baseball when you were with what was that, the Cards, right?
Yeah, with the
Yeah, man.
Cardinals. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Can't
then I
forget that.
also, let me throw another one at you. I watched a clip of you in the weight room in Korea. Do you remember that?
Mm,
You did a clip of
okay.
you, kind of a day in the life.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
Yeah.
YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, man, it was
Yeah.
cool. So
I remember that.
I was getting excited to talk to you. I was kind of reliving I was looking through your history and your past, and I think a lot of it will curate into a lot of stuff that I'm super pumped to talk to you today because of who you are now today and the journey you've done. And from an outside perspective, there's a lot of things that I admire of you. Obviously, the baseball side of it, the discipline side of it, the broadcasting side of it, the branding that you've created. I mean, you're kind of in my opinion, you're entrepreneurs, fair to say as well, right? That's in that lane as
Yeah,
well.
definitely.
But what I think is I'm excited to talk to you a lot about is how you've essentially learned all these roles and been able to form yourself and become those roles, learn those roles, adapt and be curious. And so from afar, man, that's what's always been exciting to me, to shake your hand when I can, talk to you when I can, is I just am really excited to hear from you your experiences, because I think you've really gone after life from my point of view, and attacked it and grabbed a hold of a lot of that. So with all due respect, or with all, what do you say when you start a podcast? I don't know if that's how you start it, but with all further ado, that's what it is. Further ado, we'll hand it over
Well,
to you. There it is. Hey, I just told you I'm fresh off having a
nah,
kid, so
man.
I'm a little spacey.
No, I definitely understand that. I definitely understand that. That's a lot of work. I'm blessed enough to have three myself, so I know what that's like. But I appreciate the words, man. And I think, obviously, anytime you could connect with somebody who definitely
Yeah,
understands that journey, understands kind of, the steps that come along with that, it's cool
yeah,
and it's all love. And I think that's what's special about the connections that you make, whether that be in the sports world or in the entrepreneurial world, whatever it may be. You just want to see
yeah.
people win, man. You just want to see people go after their dreams. And I think that's a lot of what I've tried to really emphasize on my
Mm,
platforms, and what I've tried to emphasize with my life is just like, you can go after
yeah,
multiple dreams, and you can keep winning no matter what. Like, a lot of times we just focused on, I want to make it
yeah.
big doing this. And sometimes we forget we can make it doing multiple things. And I think that's a lot of what I want to try to emphasize and let people know, and show it throughout my lifestyle and my
So think
journey.
on that vein, because you and I, we grew up in baseball. We'll just title sports, obviously, but baseball specifically. And we know the sports world. We
Yeah.
know the baseball mind, right? We were both in that frame at a certain point. Why is it that uh, generally, we feel like baseball or sports is our only thing, because we are growing up in that, we become that. And what you just said, we can make it in all kinds of scenarios. Did you feel you were connected to
Yeah.
that perspective when you played? and just kind of had a better a view that was outside of even the player. You know where I'm going with this? Take that and run for a minute. I think you have a cool idea.
No, I mean, I think you mentioned a good point, because we oftentimes kind of get stuck in that tunnel vision. And I don't think it's just sports, right? It could be a lot of different professions and whatnot, and a lot of different paths. But I think for me, to answer your question, I was taught at a young age that, like, you know, there's going to be something after sports, right? Like, you can be great at sports, but I was always kind of under the impression, and through my parents, very blessed to have two that are still in my life, but they taught me at a young age that, like, sports does not last forever. And there's had to be something else that I could take away from sports. I was always being introduced to the fact that, hey, Tony Gwynn has a restaurant here, or, you know, so-and-so has a car dealership. Like, there's so-and-so's doing community services, getting involved in the community. I think at a young age, I always kind of was looking up to those ones that are involved with multiple different things, and just sports wasn't their only identity. And that really resonated with me. It resonated with my family. And so therefore, while I was playing even professionally, and I remember my father-in-law said this to me before I had a father-in-law, said, you know what, baseball is going to be 3 or 4 out of your 9-inning life. Like, make sure you know what you have to do, or at least make sure you know that you have at least 5 other innings that you can be able to take care of. So to answer your question, it was always something that was kind of in the back of my dome, whether it be good or not.
That is powerful. Well, so that's perfect, because one of the specific, I never have a script when I'm doing these, but I had one specific question I did not want to not ask you, because I saw that recently, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I saw recently you were working on a project for Alex Bregman, who is, I think, still a free agent, right? And you were kind of talking about,
it
was in a really short moment, you made a thought of having a different perspective of the front office and the seat that you sit in now and the things that you're curating now, when you also have the perspective of being a Major League Baseball player. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
So what's that
absolutely.
like? How are you able to have an identity of understanding what it probably is like being a player in that moment, and then also having the ability to kind of step back and be like, this is how both these worlds look or see. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, I think I would consider it almost being similar to the perspectives that you have now outside of playing, right? Like, you've been able to see it from some different angles. And I think for someone that loves growth, you want to learn from different
100%.
perspectives. I think as a player, you have that one perspective is like, everybody's against you. You got to beat the world. Like, the GM always has like the weird look on his face to where he wants to release somebody. Like, that's kind of how you see it as a player. But once you start to open your eyes with some different perspectives, hey, this is how front offices look at certain things, having conversations with GMs and presidents of operations, managers. Okay, I see that there's so many other pieces to the puzzle. And I think that's what excites me, is like, yo, I want to learn more about those pieces. I want to know what creates that full pie. And I think that can be really asserted to any part of our life, right? Like, if I'm going, for example, if I'm going to drop my kids off at school and I'm thinking that this school doesn't seem to be the right place or whatever, like, I only know it from my perspective. Maybe I need to talk to other people to learn more about the school. Maybe I need to talk and figure out what are some of the after school things they got going on. Who are some of the teachers? There's so many perspectives, and I feel like that's something that I enjoy.
Yeah, do you think that
about.
that's one of the reasons why you probably you gravitate towards entrepreneurship, because you kind of get that development process, whether it's leave the ROIs or the P&Ls out of it, right? Think of the pure growth, because you talked about that. You just mentioned that if you're seeking growth, do you think that's something that that's what gravitates you towards being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I would say that definitely the growth, but also the impact as well, the impact factor. And
That's beautiful.
I say impact because I think a lot of what I'm driven on is like, how can I
Yeah.
impact others? Like, okay, if I'm going to create a business, how does this business, like you said, not just focus on the ROI, but how do I actually impact a
Yeah.
community? How do I impact people that I'm conversing with? How do I impact
Yeah.
followers, right? Like we have this word following is
Yeah.
like a huge word, but like, am I leading
Yeah.
them somewhere?
That's
That
cool,
that to
man.
me is the impactful factor that really drives me. And I'm sure, seeing a lot of the same stuff that you've been doing, like impact has to be
Yeah.
high on your list
Yeah.
as
Well, I
well.
think I think earlier years ago when I first was an entrepreneur and I first started diving into that world, you're so driven. I think impact is what pulls stuff out of you. I think that's what pulls creation out of you. That's
Mm,
what pulls sustainability out of
yeah.
you. I think the puzzling part as you get into it for a few years, you do start to learn the balance of business because I've found it to become, I would say it was like that. It was 100% impact, wanting to share, wanting to serve. And then all of a sudden I was 6 years
Mhm.
later and in massive debt. And well,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
gotta figure
yeah.
this
That's
out.
real.
And then you got to balance out, I think, how to run a business, how to maintain perspective, how to maintain your mission, how to maintain your meaning. And I think that's why I asked you that question, because for me, it's pulled a lot of uh, blind spots out of me personally, psychologically.
Mm,
It's made me grow as a person. It's made me be more in tune with my own voice, which actually, if I can stop there and throw it back to you, because that's another thing I want to talk to you about,
mm.
is something that you've done from my perspective as well that I really admire of you is you've seemed connected to your voice and you've had to form that voice because your voice has been publicly heard from thousands and thousands of people.
Mm.
And I want to stop that thought because I have a good thought on this again with you, is that one of the
Mm.
things that you have to do is speak about people. Because obviously outside of the entrepreneurship, you broadcast, you talk about players, you have to communicate about players, and you've been a player.
Yeah.
And you kind of talk about how players look at GMs or they look at the media and they look at these things. What's that been like? I have so many questions towards this. One is, what's that been like for you to know your own voice, to stay authentic to you, and then try to tell the best possibility to maintain love for everybody, the integrity of shows,
Yeah.
integrity of media, and then integrity of players and their lives. Yeah, that's a
Oh,
big one.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it don't, because I think it is, because a lot of it is navigating what you said for what
Yeah.
is your voice, right? Like, how do you go about your voice without feeling like you have to
Mm-hmm.
please everybody? And I think I had to understand first, and I'm
Sure.
still understanding through this journey, is that you can't
Mm.
please everybody. And if you can be as authentic as possible, I think that's when you actually differentiate yourself, right? Like you have more of a unique perspective when it's actually
Yeah.
yours, instead of trying to say, man, I want to make sure I say the right thing. I want to turn on this camera and do a million takes, but the one that's perfect. No, I can't
Yeah.
do it. Like I got to make sure that I'm just being myself. And I think to speak on what you're saying is like,
Yeah.
it's a process. And I think you're learning every day because we're always changing as human beings. But also I think, to answer the second part, I think like knowing that good leaders do a couple of things. And I think the one thing that I try to make a priority is you uplift
Right
somebody
on.
first. Like if I gotta
Yeah.
speak on somebody, let me show you what
Yeah.
is great about them first and foremost. And then what are some of the things that we
Mhm.
can make better? Like what are some of the things that are the weaknesses that can turn into strengths, or where some of their areas they need work on? And how can I relate that to myself? So I think to answer that question, like that balance and navigating talking about other people always comes with me thinking about, how do I
Sure.
uplift this person first before I get into some of the things that they can have better
Yeah, it
in their
sort of
game.
goes back to what we were just talking about with building a business or building anything. You kind of think
Mm,
that way first and let that steer your ship or your compass, if you will.
yeah,
Did you struggle with that and when you first got out?
that's
Like
good.
when, or not necessarily first got out of playing, did you struggle with that when you first started? Kind of what was the spark that dove you into media?
Yeah.
We'll say that way. What was the start of that?
Yeah, I think I always kind of liked seeing the stories about
Okay.
players off the field. Like what is special about this player off the field? And I think that's something I was always attracted to, whether
Yeah.
that be ESPN, MLB Network. And then I think once I first got an opportunity going back to 2020, if I could
Please.
tell a quick story,
Yeah.
it was 2020. MLB stopped altogether because of COVID. The only thing that was being televised as far as sports was really Korean baseball. And I had played over in the KBO a couple of seasons. One of the ESPN producers asked me to come on while I'm sitting at home doing nothing. Had me come on, hey, come talk about your experiences for 10 minutes if you would like to do so. I did it one time and then started to realize, like, man, I really like talking about baseball. I didn't realize that I like talking about baseball, the players, the nuances and whatnot, even
Yeah.
if it was 10 minutes. And so doing that a couple of times, they asked me back a couple of times. Then I got curious. Hey, how do I get involved in maybe doing some broadcast work, doing some of this media stuff? And at first, they kind of shoved me off to the side. Hey, go hit your local high school,
Classic.
get
Yeah.
some reps. Go hit your
Yeah.
local college. Yeah. And then I think they didn't realize I was serious about it, because a lot of athletes will say they want to do something that is not a top
Yeah.
priority from playing their sport, and they're really uncertain about it. But I was adamant about it. I kept hitting them up. I said, hey, how do I get it? And finally, they gave me a full Korean game
Wow.
to broadcast. And after I did that, one of the senior directors hit me up and was like, hey, I know I haven't spoke to you throughout this season, but I want to let you know you did a great job of Korean baseball. We'd like to give you some major league and college games next year. And so I said, and this was a time in which I was uncertain as to what I was going to do
Sure.
as far as playing. And I was like, you know what? To me, this is a sign that I need to take it and run with it. And that's really how I got involved on the media side.
That's incredible. I can't help but think about when you get that call and it's like, hey, we want to give you some MLB stuff, some college stuff, and you're still so fresh in this, so that it's still still had to have had this crazy acceleration period of learning. I don't want to necessarily say maybe you did learn on the fly. Tell me if you did, but it's like, how are you learning? How are you learning your voice and your talent and how to improve that skill set while doing it at these levels? Because we're not talking about high school on that. How are you doing that at that level? Was it happening so fast that you just were handling it like anything else, or what was that like?
Dude, it was
Bet.
happening quick. And I think there was a couple
Okay.
of things that helped me. One, during this time in 2020, a lot of us sitting at home, we trying to figure out what's going on, including myself. And my wife was like, maybe you should start a podcast. And I was like, I don't know about all that. And then, I just, when we listen to our wives, when we listen to our women, they usually write about it. So I started the podcast. So naturally, I'm developing speaking skills without really even being extremely adamant about it. And then I got the opportunity to, do the Korean baseball stuff. I'm speaking there. And then I spoke to John Morosi, who works for MLB Network, off the rip. And he said, hey, MLB is trying to create a podcast. They've never done a player-to-player podcast. Maybe you should talk to them. Talk to MLB. We end up creating a podcast. So I'm doing more of the speaking aspect of things without really, not really noticing that I need to be practicing or whatnot. I think it was more natural than anything. And then during that same period in 2020, MLB Network Radio was like, hey, we're looking for some former players if you would like to jump on every now and then. So I'm starting to get reps doing 3-hour-long shows. And of course, 3 hours, you don't even know what to say for 10 minutes
100%.
most of the time. So for 3 hours, if I'm bringing stuff to the top of the dome, that makes me want to write notes out. What do I want to say throughout the course of it? So I'm naturally practicing things that I never really knew went into it. And in a culmination of doing all that, I think accelerated me to where I was trying to get to.
What's the learning process like? Because now I would imagine you have you obviously are saying all these things. You have these stories. You have this history. What's a process of learning speaking skills, or learning interview skills, or learning how to cover 3 hours of content? Because now you have reps in that. What's that like?
Yes, yes. I would say one of the things is listening to people that I like listening to, right? Like if it's someone like, and it could be different types of people, they don't have the same style. One of the things I did was I listened to Oprah do
Okay.
interviews, and I'm like, okay, there's a certain style that she has doing interviews. I listened to broadcasts, Alex Rodriguez. A lot of people don't
Yeah.
like A-Rod, but I noticed that A-Rod, he gets his point in and gets out. He gets his point in and there's certain people that have certain styles. And I think I learned from different people, listening to them and trying to figure out, okay, how can I take different things from different people and create a accumulation of what everybody is doing, and create my own unique style. So that was kind of the way that I
Did
tried
you
to look at
notice
it.
a time, or maybe you're still in it, did you notice a time where your own unique style really started to show itself to you?
I think so. I think going into, I think it was 2021. I was looking back at my videos and watching
Okay.
myself, and I'm like, okay, there's certain things that I'm doing that like are unique, and I tried to like lean into some of those things. For example, like I noticed that whenever I'm describing something, I'm definitely using
Yeah.
my hands, right? And I
Yeah.
noticed that it can be engaging.
Yeah.
It can be engaging. So I'm like, maybe I should try to do that a little bit more if I'm on
Yeah.
TV, right? Or same thing with some of the negative things, right? If I listen back to myself and I'm saying, yeah, certain filler words, okay, what can I use instead of those words, and make those adjustments as well. And then I'm starting to develop a style, right? And I'm like, okay, I need to lean in on this. So I think just to be able to keep myself differentiated from
Yeah.
other people, right? And listening to other people say, what do they kind of do over and over again that I should stay away from? And I think that was kind of a way to evaluate how I wanted to
Do you
communicate.
ever, this is just, do you ever have, because now you have, again, so many reps in this. What was the nerves like? You think about ball players. I work a lot with athletes and nerves and pregame
Yeah.
anxieties and those sort, even in game, post game, downshifting, et cetera, et cetera. What's that like for you then, now, all the above? What's that process like?
I think most of the nerves, and I think a lot of people will tell you this in their industries, come from almost that
Mm,
imposter syndrome, right? Like you almost looking at yourself like, am I qualified
100%.
enough for this? Second guessing yourself. And I think that's where the nerves came from. And most of the time, I would try to quiet that voice with just extreme preparation, right? Like just diving into everything I can, and maybe being over prepared. But I think that's what allowed me to shut that voice off. Like, yo, no, 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 no.
Mm-hmm.
I've done the work. Like we've
Mm-hmm.
done the work. And just having that confidence in myself was mostly a part of those nerves. But I think also, and you
Mm-hmm.
know this from playing, if we can find a way to take those nerves and turn them into a
Mm-hmm.
positive energy, which I started to learn how to do, I want to say towards the end of my career, was like, I'm nervous. Wait a minute. How can I turn this into, yo, let's take
Yeah,
this
shift it.
energy and this emotion and drive it into the baseball
Yeah.
per se. Like that's kind of was my thought process going towards the end of my career. So I'm trying to use that same thought process when I'm going out there and just TV broadcast, whatever it may be, taking that energy and making sure it's turned
Yeah, that's
positively.
phenomenal. In terms of preparation, you're covering a lot. I've never understood this. How do you prepare? Like, baseball is a game every day. You have players, you have hundreds of
Mm-hmm.
players, right? And then you have people you're working with, teams, managers, staffs, all this stuff. And even when I got
Yeah.
to see you in Philly, for example, I know you're studying, you're preparing, you're getting yourself ready, and you have to be always thinking, thinking, thinking. How do you and maybe it's a lot simpler than it feels or seems, but it seems really hard. Let's just put it that way. That's
No, but I think but like anything that is, you know, is worth it,
yeah.
it's going to be tough. And I think that's one of the things that helps drive me is like, I know everybody
Mm.
can't do this. Like, this is real. Like, trying to figure out every single 30 teams, who's that last guy in the bullpen. I
Right.
want to know him just as much as I know
Yeah.
Matt Chapman, right? Like, some of the superstars. Like, I want to know that last guy, and maybe that gives me a little
Mm.
bit of the edge. But also I keep in mind of what's important, right? Like, what's going to come up in conversation that I need to be prepared for. It may be minute. It may be something that everybody's talking about. I think that preparation word that we talked about was just is focus on knowing what's going to be important for our
Mm.
conversations.
How do you gather that, right? Because you have to be in and out, right? You know how it is as a player. These guys are at the field all day. They're traveling. Same with yourself. You change time zones. You're in night games, day games. These guys are tired and they're getting poked at regularly. What have you found to be successful in your own? And maybe you don't want to give it away, but you got to get in and out. Again, kind of the A-Route example, right? Like, how do
Yeah,
you find your timing with people? And that doesn't have to just be towards media or your profession or understanding things. I think that's just a
yeah,
good way to know people and learn the energy of
yeah,
people. And that's where you can kind of take it however you want, either individually, how have you learned how to connect with each players, whether it's a superstar, whether it's a guy who just got called up, or in how has that
yeah.
helped you curate your work? And then I guess the second part is, what has that taught you about people? Because I'm sure you've gotten a front row seat to human behavior and psychology.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, man,
Yeah.
that's deep. Honestly, that's deep because everybody's communication
Hmm.
is different. And I think I've learned that when people communicate, everybody wants something, right? Like, it's either you want to be heard about something, you're trying to get an answer about something, you're trying to get something off your chest, whatever it may be. And I think a lot of it for me, if we're
Yeah.
being completely honest, is kind of how you started this conversation. Is like, let me make sure at least I have one question that is a priority for me, but I want this to be as
Yeah.
organic as possible, right? Because I think that's when we receive the most amount of information, and that's when somebody doesn't feel like we're trying to get
Hmm.
something from them. I think that as an athlete, that's like the number one thing that
Amen.
is the barrier between media is like, they're trying to get something from me to use against me. And the exact opposite of how I want to go into conversation is, let me go in as authentic as possible and let him or he or she feel
Yeah.
the energy that I'm just trying to have a conversation with you. Let's chop
Yeah, I
it
feel
up.
like that had to have been that's like the beauty of what makes you you is that you played, but then I do think that story in 2020 and 2021, the colliding of that, and you were thrown into it organically, it seems like, and you had to learn it organically, but you also have the perspective of both sides. And I think that's your point. I've always likened it to meeting people where they are, and as far as like a teacher and a coach of my aspect, one of the things that I loved about working with pro athletes is it's so diverse. You're with people and it's not just diverse from culturally, it's diverse in age. You can work with, for example, the Giants are going to have, what's Verlander, 42? And they're going to
Yeah.
have someone on their team this year who's 22. And it's like, in what clubhouses in sports is there a 20 year gap in
Yeah,
perspective? And they're
that's a
both
good
going to have
point.
a jersey on and be playing for the same team. And so I think that meeting people where they're at is always somewhat been on the top of my mind. But that's
Yeah.
again, okay, let's take that same vein. I've been in the clubhouse. I was with the Giants for those last 4 years. I was with them. So I
Yeah.
had time, and
Yeah.
I'm on the squad. For you to meet people where they're at, how do you here's a good way of putting it. You see somebody on TV, right? You're watching them, you're studying them, and maybe you
Yeah.
haven't met them in person yet. And then you meet them. And they are meeting you for the first time, but you've somewhat met them multiple times. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What's that like?
Yes, absolutely. I think, and I think this relates and aligns with your profession is how do I
Yeah.
build trust with that person? I let them know, hey, I've
Oh,
seen
nice.
something. I see,
Yeah.
I've seen something that you do that
Okay.
is special. Hey, I noticed that you do this with the front foot. Hey, can you kind of can you tell me a little bit
Nice.
about why you
Yeah.
do that? And I think it's being vulnerable too, right? Like, man, if that's me walking up, man, I know you had to face Verlander last night. I know he's a
Yeah.
tough matchup, man. Like, whatever I can do to relate, build that trust, show them that I care authentically about them and what they have to say. I think that's a big part of it. But to your point, like having
Yeah.
been in the shoes is a big help because there's certain things I can say that other people are not going
Right.
to be able to say as soon as they have a conversation with somebody. But I think it is the same for when you have any type of communication with somebody on the street. Like you were trying to find something that relates immediately to spark that
Yeah. I
conversation.
love that. I love that. That's a 100%. I couldn't agree with that more. So what's it like? What's it like traveling? What's it like in season? Because we have the idea of the ball
Mhm.
player and how difficult that. I think baseball is. I think one of the reasons why baseball is arguably up. All of them are tough sports, but the travel of baseball is wild, right? And for you,
Mm.
what's it like?
Unreal.
What's your summers looking like? We're getting ready to get into camp, but what's it like in your world? Yeah.
It's wild, man. It's wild because you going from place to place. I think I did about almost 180 to 200
Come
days on the
on.
road last year. Yeah, and to me, it's almost normal because
Yeah.
that's what we've been
That's what we
doing
know.
most of our life.
Right.
It's like traveling, living out of the
Yeah.
suitcase, buses, planes,
Yeah.
whatever it may be. But now, and this is where you'll relate. Now you got
Mhm.
the family, right? Like they
Right.
not used to
Right.
that. Like you have to figure out the balance between now. How is that support system? How is that family? How are the close ones affected? And that's the toughest part. So I try to do as much as I can. And actually, I think put this out on one of my platforms not too long ago. The investment of allowing my family to be as much with me as possible, if that's on the road, if that's a game here and there, whatever it may be, I try to commit to
Yeah.
that investment because I know it's going to
Yeah.
pay dividends in my happiness, in
Yeah.
their happiness. So that to me has been the toughest adjustment because when I played, I didn't have kids. I had one kid in Korea, and then I was
Sure.
about done playing after that. So just learning from that has been tough, that's also the most fun thing is, I'm going to these different places. I'm experiencing different things. I didn't like, I had a cup of coffee in the big leagues comparably to a lot of people. So now I'm getting to see some places
Sure.
I've never been to. So that to me is the most exciting aspect of it as
Well,
well.
let's step outside of baseball. Let's step out of your travel and with I agree with you on
Yeah.
the family aspect. We do the same thing. We invest in making sure we have time together because it makes me better. If I'm with my family, I am a
Yes.
better teacher. I've just seen
Yes.
that. But so you're traveling, and one of the things that I love about travel is I think that it makes it just it's an unbelievable teacher in and of itself. You see how the world moves, and you understand how to. Let's just use getting a cup of coffee. If you get a cup of coffee in 50 states, it's different. Like the people you're talking to are different. The stereotypes are different. The culture is different. And how much of what have you learned? Like, just take yourself outside of the game. Think about it as like
Yeah.
you've seen parts of the world. You travel the country. Like you just talked about how many days you were on the road. What's like your own
Yeah.
interest level? What's your own curiosity that you learn
Mm.
about travel that teaches to you, or what comes to you? I know you know what I mean by
Yeah.
that.
Hey, that's good, man, because I think I think I
Mm,
need to do more. Like I just, I and when I say that I mean explore more. Like because I get a taste of certain things, it makes me want to, hey, I need to
yeah.
go back there and I need to talk to more of those people. I need to go visit that area more. and get out more. Because I think, and one of the reasons why I say that too is because as a player, a lot of times with the 162, it's almost like I need to get my rest. I need to stay in the room until it's time to go to the field. So the mind shift for me, has been important, and an aspect in which I didn't expect. And I think it just tells me I need to do more. I need to communicate more with other people. That's how we learn more. I need to explore more. And everywhere I've learned, everywhere has a place to offer, right? It could be the place that you just don't expect. You're like, man, I don't want to go here. No, they got something. They have something. And I think that's what's special about, going to these different places too, and including internationally, because that's where your perspective is really opened in a major way, because we get stuck in like our bubble, and now you're like, wait a minute, this is going on here and here. So I think that's what has been cool about it as well.
Did you feel a difference from when you first started out, take you back to that 2020 when you were broadcasting in Korea for that summer, essentially, for that season, and then you came over here in 21?
Yeah.
Was there a difference of how people heard you, or how did you feel like you had to communicate maybe different speed, different tone, whatever? What's that kind of like?
I think that's been something that has come a little bit more natural, because I think, like, I go back to 2011 and I went to Colombia to play baseball, and I talk about that because, like, I did some early international stuff that opened my eyes to, hey, if I'm in a Latin country, I've got to act a certain way, or I've got to remove myself from certain things that I expectations, right? I've got to be able to communicate a certain way. So I think that opened my eyes to Latin culture. The same thing goes for playing over in Korea. The same thing goes for playing in different Mexico, whatever it may be. I think early on, I was open to the idea that I can't bring my ways to another country. I've got to find a way to evolve into their lifestyle. And I think that's what's been a challenge at times. But at the same time, those challenges continue to help me grow as a person. Right now, I can have conversation with so many people from different areas. And we talked about relating with somebody and building trust. That to me is like maybe an advantage I have over somebody else.
I would think so, right? Because the part that stands out to me on that is you have to be a chameleon. You have to essentially meet. It's going back. It's kind of what we were talking about. It's like how you meet a player where they're at. Now you're talking about meeting a country where they're at, or a city and whatnot. And that's a really cool point. That's a really cool point, man. I think.
But I think, like, the best way to kind of be able to do that is just, I think, just you put yourself in uncomfortable situations.
That's what I'm thinking.
Like,
keep going.
That's all I'm like. I can't be scared of those anymore. Excuse me, because a couple of things. I don't know if you can see, but I have a St. Louis Cardinals jersey. Oscar Taveras passed away in 2014. And I have Jose Fernandez as well, number 16, who passed away in 15. I'm sorry, in 16. But what it's taught me is life is too short to not just jump into uncomfortable situations, especially when you know they're going to make you better as a person. And we don't have time to waste. Like, and this is the most important thing, is being relational with somebody. The fact that we can just hit each other up and, hey, let's have a conversation. I mean, that's something that we don't get to do every day. And I want to do more of that.
Yeah. Again, you kind of alluded earlier to how you were raised and the influences that you've had around you. But has that I would imagine that's only gotten bigger. Was that something with kids maybe that has taught you so much about time? Because you've had to funnel and filter time with travel, with your businesses, with everything. It seems like time is really meaningful to you. What's that feel like? What are you feeling right now when you even think about the concept of time?
Man, I think that's what is most fascinating to me is like how fast time moves as we continue to get older, as we have more family, as we try to have prioritization with certain things. You start to understand how long you've been scrolling on the phone. You're like, wait a minute, I wasted 12 hours on this thing. Like, how did that happen? So I think you start to be more cognizant of those things, and you want to be intentional about it. And yes, that's something I'm working on in a major way, especially with 3 kids. Like, you want to make sure you prioritizing each one individually the right amount, right? Like, I don't want to be giving my youngest one more time than the middle one, right? The middle one always get the short end of the stick, but that's where, that's where you trying to divvy up, and you trying to be smarter about it, because it's quick. I was literally just thinking, and it's so funny you said it. I was literally in the shower yesterday, and I graduated in 2005 high school. I have my 20-year reunion coming this summer, and I'm like, yo, 20
what just
years? 20 years it's been? Like that, and that was something that woke me up. It was like we got like an Instagram of the high school. It's like, hey, 20-year reunion, stay ready for all the posts and all that. And I'm like,
yeah, man.
What? Like, I was literally thinking about like every year since that.
Okay, well, so think about, as I kind of already asked you about preparation, I had a pitching coach on here with me a few weeks ago, and JP Martinez, he just got the head job. You'll talk to him, I'm sure. He's the new head guy with the Giants. And JP had said to me that he goes, I don't want to use his word, I don't want to screw up what he said, but he was essentially talking about how there's so much information now for coaching that it's like the best time ever to coach, because you obviously get the relationships with players, talking about what we're talking about, meeting people where they're at, forming relationships, trust, love, all the above. But he talked about how much information is available to you, so you can constantly be a student as a teacher now. And he was talking about it in a very, very positive way. And I do think that's very, very positive. But I want to double down on this thought with you of, we are in an information era, and you can have information from everything, but then you can also focus on your information for your own craft. And you can probably be flying all over the place, having short windows, and then you have family and kids, and then you have this recollection, or this conception, I guess, of time and how fast it goes. What's that like? Because you can very easily get grabbed by the 12 hours in the phone, because information is available. If you and I wanted to stop and start studying our craft right now, we can. And I think that we have to dance with that, because we could have this addiction or this obsession, this high achieving, get more, because it's always available. But then some of our most wisest moments come from not taking in any information. So what's that? What do you feel when you hear that?
Dang, that's good, man.
You just got me so excited. So I don't know. I know I'm not giving you pinpointed questions. They're so broad, but
Nah, because you getting deep, man. You getting deep. That's the thing. Okay, so I guess I'm learning. So I'm learning that. I'm learning how to go about that. And I think one thing that's helped me, I'll say something that's helped me, and obviously what you mentioned are things that can hurt at times, right? Like trying to do too much with my time, but also sitting back and maybe not feeling like I've been progressive enough. So one of the things is I've tried to make the three bubbles, like 3 platforms, right? Family, faith, and baseball, or profession. So like, if it ain't helping my faith, I'm trying to put it off to the side. If it ain't helping my family, I'm trying to put it off to the side. If it ain't helping my profession, I'm trying to put it off to the side, or at least I can wait on that a little bit. It doesn't have to be a priority. Another thing is, recently read the book Holy Habits. And kind of what they talked about is exactly what you talked about. Almost, some of your best moments are when you're silent, or like when you have time for discovery, like you're not bogged down by other things. So I think that reminded me that there has to be a bucket of just, whether it be meditation, whether it be just silence, whether it be just, not feeling like I have to hit every bucket. just giving myself time to not
Yeah.
have noise is important too. And I think that I've kind of just come to that realization, because when I'm creating the best stuff is ultimately what you said. Like when you take a step back and you don't have noise from everywhere. That's where I feel like I work
Hey,
the best. And maybe that's
hey.
different for other people, but it's like, yo, don't leave me alone. I don't need the noise. Let me just lock in on some silence, because I think that can help get that
That's
creativity
probably
out
why
of
you
me.
love lifting so early and getting those morning lifts, I would imagine.
That's
I think that, yeah, I think the
that's
thing
fact.
about you that is so, again, that I admire greatly is because you do take in so much information. And me, I think about these things a lot outside of it. What is so cool about you is the concept of travel and the amount of people you talk to and the amount of information that you channel. And I think that you're a creator, right? So it's like your ability to take all that in is what I think makes your art and has made your art so beautiful for many years, because
Yeah.
you're taking it, you're receiving it, and then it's essentially coming out of you. And that's why you've grown in so many different ways. You can handle so many different scenarios, and you understand your perspective is wide. And yeah, I don't know. I guess that's not really a question. I would just imagine that's why you find your consistent approach with those morning workouts, and it's probably coming to you, isn't it? I mean, do you feel it coming to you during that?
Yeah. Well, I feel like, and you could probably speak on this better than me, but I feel like there's certain energy or certain situations that I feel myself gravitating towards more and more, because I know something
Yeah.
just feels right, right? Like, so whether that be quietness in the morning and just getting a workout in and feeling good the rest of the day, whether that be hitting
Yeah.
the sauna for 10 minutes and I'm like, man, I don't know why I feel
Yeah.
so much better, but I know this
Yeah.
is something I need to be doing because I
Yeah.
feel better, and everybody around me
Yeah.
feels better after that. I don't know why I still do cold tub, hot tub, cold tub, but for some reason, this cold tub helps me feel better
Yeah.
after.
Yeah.
There's certain
Yeah.
things I may not have the answer for, but it's like, okay, I know it's right because it feels right. And I think that's kind of something that I've kind of let flow into my life, is like, if something feels right, let's let and but also with
Yeah.
discretion, right? Like, I can't just do things because it makes me always feel good. Like, if it aligns with the things that I'm
Hmm.
talking about, faith, family, and profession, in which that
Better.
makes everything better, okay, that's
Yeah, I've
money
always
right
thought
there.
about it. I was actually just talking to a guy I work with yesterday, and I was telling him that your mind body work together. And when they're working efficiently and optimally together, you're essentially just being healthy. Your container of consciousness opens. And when you have a bigger space,
Mm,
that's where everything that you experience, faith, family, profession, again, that forms itself in that space, and that's how you create. You launch out of that space. So if your space is
right.
closed off and you're not healthy, you're not feeling good, you're not giving yourself that ability, you're not putting things into buckets, well, then you're reactive. And you know, it's like when you're reactive, you're emotional,
Yeah.
you're reactive, you're not thinking, you're not rationally thinking at least, and you're definitely not creating. So you're losing time, essentially, is what we were talking about. And so you do need to have these,
Dang.
you do need to have these, you do need to
Preach.
have these foundations. And okay, well, we can kind of, yeah, yeah.
Wait, hold on. You said, real quick, I don't want you to lose it. You said container of
Yeah,
consciousness. Is that what
yeah,
you said?
that's what I said.
No, yo, that is real. I'm no, I haven't heard it put that way, but
Yeah,
I like
yeah,
hearing that. It makes perfect
yeah,
sense.
yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, that's you, whether you know you're building your container or not. That I mean, I've started waking up earlier because of you, which is a really that's no lie. Like I started having a kid. I had a kid, didn't start having a kid. I had a kid, and I started trying to live my life the way I was living it, and it was like not happening. This is not going to happen because I can't do that anymore. And
Uh,
I started seeing you lifting early in the morning. I was like, that's going to be my window. Like, that's when I'm going to have to do it. And I had to shift my former life to change. But so that,
I hey, but I think our
That is for
point
real, by
about
the way.
time
Yeah.
is like, you realize if I'm going to have
Yeah.
some time, like I better knock this
Yeah.
out early. And that's, I don't want to be waking up at 4:45, 5 a.m. to be getting lifts in, but I know that that's going to be the most efficient for my schedule, for my time, and for
Yeah.
my family. Like that's like, and it makes me feel better. Like I woke up the other day and I'm trying to remember what I had. I think I had radio. I was doing
Yeah.
MLB Network radio. And it was like after 5 days of waking up in the morning, at least getting
Yeah.
some
Yeah. Yeah.
movement in
Yeah.
early 5 a.m. The next day, I'm like, okay, I got to sleep in a little bit, and then I go into like, why don't I have the
Yeah.
same energy? What? Wait, I actually got to sleep in a little bit more, but I don't have that same vibe. And like you said, I was
Yeah.
reactionary about
Yeah.
certain things, and I didn't like that feeling. So whether I want to or not, I'm
Yeah.
doing it
Build.
because I know it's going to make the
Yeah.
rest of the
That's the
day.
container. That's what we're talking about. You need to get your container. Because you essentially.
Dang. Hold on, I'm writing that. The container of consciousness. That is
Yeah, man.
amazing. I
Well,
love
that's what I was
that,
going to
man.
say. Whether you
Thank
knew
you
you were
for that.
doing that or not, I think that that's just a testament to your experiences, right? And you've found ways to improve yourself, and that's what all great athletes do. I think that's what all entrepreneurs do. I think that's all great husbands do that, fathers do that. I think we have to do that in every aspect of our
Yeah.
lives. But we do have to launch from a place of having space, because if we don't have that container, if we don't expand it, then you already know, man. Like we
Yeah.
can't create, we can't be there for people. We can't even let faith in. We can't excel into
Yes.
that. So yeah, I think you do a phenomenal job of that, man. And I think that that's shown in your art over the years. And I think, yeah, I don't know. This felt like it was 30 seconds long talking to you, because it was just so, it was just a blast. But
Hey, but
yeah,
let me ask you something. Do you feel like, I think there's one area that I'm really, I don't know if it's a
sure.
struggle, but I want to get much better at, is like this idea of community, especially as a father. And we
Mhm.
talked about our time, trying to divvy it up the right way. But I still need Johnny. We need to go have coffee
Yeah.
and have, I need to have Johnny. We need to go get Matt and bring him over here. And we need to
Yeah.
go get Jermaine. Like I need to be better at bringing more people around me and having
Yeah.
these types of conversations, because I feel like that's what life
Yeah.
is about. But also I feel like there's a struggle there, right? It's like, I know I can be content with just the family, but we supposed to be making community. Like we supposed to be making friends, and not living life in isolation. And I think that's
Yeah, well, I think
important too.
that's kind of that's the difficulty of what we have right now. Like we have social media, we have this, we have access to communicate. You can feel like you're talking to someone regularly because you're texting them or you're seeing them. Like I
Yeah.
feel like I see you. Yeah, I'm not exaggerating that, and I didn't plan on telling you that, but it truly was like, okay, if this guy can hammer out lifts in the morning and he can run a business and he can be a dad, I need to kind of reframe some of my schedule. I have been reframing things based off of some of the stuff that you've been
That's
showing.
awesome.
So my
That's
point of that is
awesome.
that beautifully influences because of the platform, your platform. The difficulty is you and I we're not hanging out, having coffee, and it'd be cool if
Yeah.
we were. It'd be
No.
cool if we were hanging out. And so
Yes.
then you're right. It's like we're such a
Yes.
moving machine now where we travel, we go things all the time, we go places, and we can see each other digitally where and I'm just thinking of a theory, this is a hypothesis. We maybe feel like we're hanging out with people because we have such
Right.
access now and it's so quick. But then I think the hard part is in this dimension, this physical dimension where I'm sitting where I'm at right now and you're sitting where you're at. We don't feel the energy of other people. Like if you and I were feeling each other's energy
Yeah.
in front of each other right now, it would be even magnified. It'd be different.
A
Yeah,
different vibe.
it'd be
Yeah.
heavier.
Yeah.
And so I don't know the answer to that. I think my first answer that comes to me is everything we're talking about. I think that you and I are so fortunate that we get to meet so many people regularly and we get to shake so many people's hands. And I think it's showing up with in an abundance of love and sharing space with love for others, and hopefully, ideally, putting that in a position where when other people come into your bubble, wherever that is, maybe this is my theory, maybe we're the first species where our communities have really gone big and we're this interconnected species maybe that's where we're at, because we used to just be in the small tribes and the small connections. Now we're interconnected. We meet thousands of people regularly. And I think maybe using that word consciousness, maybe the expansion of our consciousness is we've never had that in our lives. And so we're figuring that out. Like maybe we're just figuring out how that works. Where are you at with that?
Well, I think that makes complete sense. And I think what I get from that is ultimately we have a responsibility. Like if that's true, we have a responsibility to at least live out a certain way and stay encouraged, because what you saying about you checking the workouts out in a certain way that things influence you. Okay. There's certain things that I'm doing that uplifts other people. 100%. I got a responsibility. Like I can't just chill. Like if I'm affecting people in a certain way, like I want to continue to do that. And I think that's what I mean.
One of the perfect example too is how you met me in Philly, man. Like I was a little nervous to shake your hand because you were working. You know how that is at BP. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of things going on, but in your moment of work, you embraced me and were present with me. And maybe that was a 5-minute thing, but you were asking me about me. Right. You were asking about my life. You were asking me about me. You were checking in on me. We were able to kind of like form like, hey, remember when we did a podcast years ago,
Definitely.
But my point is like, even in the midst of your work, because I could tell you were working mentally. You know how that is. You're turned on. You can tell someone's thinking, processing, and you don't want to disrupt that.
Right.
But even in that moment, you were able to do both. You were able to be at work, but you also made me feel welcome in the space. And I really appreciated that, man. That's all. And you've done the same thing of getting this podcast together. You've been that same guy since in all my interactions have been like that. So maybe that is what I'm taking from it too. Maybe that's having the ability to hold space for both. I hold space for this profession when I'm out in the world, but I also hold space for love and I can connect. I hold space for family. I hold space for faith, and I just kind of become the art, I guess would be the final thought of that.
Yeah.
You got me going
good,
now, man.
That's good. I love that, man. I love that. Nah, I appreciate you. And that's love, obviously. Anytime we come across each other and I think a lot of it is just seeing what you doing, you putting the grind in, you obviously want somebody to win that you see them putting the work in, man. And especially somebody that's been through the journey that I've been through. So, I love
all right, brother.
Stuff.
Well, hey, how obviously I'll do all the stuff on the back end. Anything you want to close on, anyone can find you, any projects you're working on, anything coming up?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is just like I want people to continue to tap in on the radio, because I think it gives me more space to do this, just have conversations. So I'm on MLB Network Radio, Sirius XM channel 89, most weekday mornings from 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern. And it's a lot of just conversation about baseball, but obviously other stuff going on as well.
All right, man. This was a blast. I'll hang out with me for a second. I'll close off, and everybody who listened, cheers. Appreciate your time.